Good evening and welcome to Slam the Gavel, the show that tells it all regarding family court, other court issues, as well as CPS. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, and there's a non-denominational retreat at the Resolution Center of Jacksonville, Florida. This will be a time of support and renewal for parents and grandparents on the journey of parental alienation, standing strong in resilience, paving the way for good health and a great future. This will take place April 22nd through the 24th, 2022 at the Resolution Center of Jacksonville, Florida. I will have all the details in the podcast notes. I have a return guest. Her name is Jennifer Murphy. She was last here, season 3, episode 22 on February 23rd, 2022. And we're going to have a lot to discuss because she puts children first, and there's just no other way to do it. We're going to talk about a multidisciplinary, multifaceted assault on child sex abuse going on around the globe, and what is going to be somehow accomplished through learning about all this. I welcome you, Jennifer Murphy.
Thank you, Maryann, and hello to your audience. I am thrilled to be back. I really am. We want to thank you so much for your input and your priority of getting people to some clinical work and retreats and things like that. And as a therapist and psychologist, that's really key and important to what I do. So I'm very impressed with some of the other podcast hostesses that also just do that. So thank you for that. Thanks for having us back. We have a lot to share, a lot to talk about.
I'm glad to have you back because a lot of people aren't aware of all of this until it happens to them or a family member. So, yes.
So when we started the initiative, I had done 3 years of just putting my head down, grinding, Holy Spirit led, doing what I was told to do, basically. About 2.5 years into it, I literally physically pushed myself away from my desk and said to God and the heavens and everyone else around me, "You gotta be kidding." So I then started 3.5 years of undercover investigations with all of the sex trafficking NGOs, and I started locally. Then I went regionally, then I went nationally, and then we went internationally. What we found, and what we're getting ready to publish, are the results of those investigations. And let me just tell you that it is an understatement to say that the results are repugnant. Child sex trafficking is a topic. The reason we started this initiative is because for 35 years, I have been telling people all over a continent and farther, stop having sex with children. Adults, stop it. So you would think, when I started in the 80s, that at this point, 35 years later, I would see shifts, we would see programs, the work that I would do for the 35 years all over North America, very successfully, might I add, without the constraints of everything we do makes money. Like we have, I call it soul-driven programs, like in Canada, that are progressive, family functioning, family oriented, keep kids in the family, if at all possible. And then the United States, which everything is done for $1. Every time we put a person in county jail, the federal government says cha-ching, cha-ching to our local piggy banks. Same for probation and parole, same for child welfare. So when I thought about what the fraud that these people were doing to make money, I'm still repulsed. And then it occurred to me, there is no possible way, after 35 years of fighting this fight in the trenches, on the front lines, hands and feet of Jesus, and I mean big cities across North America, not little tiny ones like Southwest Florida where we're located now. I'm talking big metropolis cities, 2 million, 4 million people. I was the only psychologist in the area who could go out for these calls, whether they knew a child had been sexually abused or they thought they were abused. They sent me. So I know how badly the world needs this. But after 35 years, I thought there is no possible way that people don't want this to stop. I thought my head was going to explode. When the investigations were through with each of the different designations, local, regional, national, and it was so very clear that nobody's doing anything. There have been no shifts, no movement in thinking, no movement in process, no movement towards consequences. And what we do know is that it happens and they don't stop. men and women, but mostly men, who commit these crimes of child sex abuse destroy a human life from the inside out. So when I looked at all the trafficking stuff, there's no way. And that was very clear. The results are very clear. These people do not want to stop. Can you imagine 35 years? And I keep saying it because I can almost not believe it myself. And these people are using this kind of depravity against child victims to make money? Are you freaking kidding me? They're not running programs. They're not getting help. They're not using therapists. They're not using local. They don't support local. They don't support organizations like mine who have been doing it forever and know how to stop it. They don't even ask. And it's not just the organizations who don't ask. It's the governors. It's the state attorneys. We've reached out to all of them repeatedly. Nobody wants our in-demand program. So when we looked at that, and I thought, you know what? Sex trafficking is a scam by the devil. So everybody points their head that way because there's dollar signs next to it. There's dollar signs all around it. So your frauds and your NGOs who are really not understanding or grasping the concept of any of this true truth in terms of what is actually happening. Trafficking is a bust. So we put that over there. So what's really the scourge of human soul and life on this planet is child sex abuse. The unfettered, the unstopped, the unconsequenced, the never freaking changing anything victims who never heal, who never get help, who never see a therapist like I've been trained to be, not because I'm so special, but because I got the training God needed me to have to continue this fight. Because I can tell you on a daily basis, I think, what am I doing? I'm one little person, no volunteers because of COVID, no staff, no money. And if I'm doing the work like this and I'm still seeing clients, what are people doing like the Polaris Project with $11 million in their bank account and they cannot confirm or verify the statistics that they send out in their emails twice a week to get money? When I looked at the biographies of those kids they kept pimping out for money, by the way, they're worse than the pimps and traffickers. These organizations who say they help, they don't. We've asked, we have all the evidence. We will be sending it out in some form or fashion. But I do like to keep it classy. But I did a lot of hard work to find these things out. So the trafficking thing's a fraud. Yes, it's happening. It's not new. It's a little bit bigger than maybe the back pages of your old newspaper personals, but it's not the numbers that we are seeing on the internet. In 6 minutes, I found 5 different statistics, and one of them I'd never even seen before. 128 million are involved in child sex slavery, whatever. Not even close. And by the way, if there were 150,000 kids in child sex slavery, why don't we know where they are? And why aren't we rescuing them? Why are we only rescuing less than 1% of the victims? If there's 128,000 kids in trouble like that, wouldn't it make sense that we would know where they are? I mean, when I count my clients, I go, Jane, Susie, Paul, Mary, da-da-da. I have 10 clients. I have 3 children. I have 4 bananas in my kitchen. I have 4 apples.
Right.
They're not counting. So it's a lie. It is a lie. It is a fraud on the American people to their pocketbooks. And all these people are doing is lining their pockets. Exodus Cry is another one of my favorite ones. Lie the Mechanic has been trying to shut down Pornhub for a minimum of 2.5 years. I stopped watching about 2 years in because with 76 full-time employees, I don't understand what has taken them so long. You see what I'm saying? We helped shut down Backpage, and we did it because we knew what Backpage did, and different than Craigslist. So we understood from the work that I've done my whole life is that the issue is not trafficking. Trafficking is a topic. The issue, my friends, is child sex abuse, sexual exploitation. Your children are not vulnerable to traffickers if they aren't being raped in their own beds in their own homes by their fathers, uncles, brothers, coaches. When we learned about it in the 80s, it was 95% the fathers were the offenders. Can you imagine how, those things have grown. Those things have shifted. We went from teaching stranger danger to good touch, bad touch. That was in the 80s. We're not doing anything. Nobody's doing anything. I know, but and the worst part is nobody's doing what they say they're going to do. And that pisses me off the most because they don't know what they don't know. So when somebody calls you and says, I've been a trafficking victim, which I'm going to tell you the truth, we played it. I role play, I get a new identity. One of the organizations locally who's done nothing but raise money has an entire beautiful glossy web page of nothing, where they state they have all these programs to help. Well, we sent them an email. We told them we were somebody from the West Coast, all our social media is done, we just escaped, you know, that kind of thing. What can you offer? I probably need this, and this services, blah, 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 right? The email that we got back said this, I'm not lying. Could you tell us more what you mean about tracking? Tracking, Tracking. I sent it to my, thank you. I sent it to my assistant to make sure that my old ass eyes were not going blind. They did nothing. Not only that, but the local organizations were the worst as far as saying they do things and don't. Bringing and calling people trafficking victims when they're escorts and they're dancers and they're sex sellers. That's a lie. That's a fraud. But they're making money from it. They're allowed to apply for grants if they say that these women are trafficking victims. Not only that, but two of the organizations here bring these victims into their own homes. Into their own homes to house them. No clinical experience, no psychology background, no therapy. And one of the women is actually trafficking them. Now, let me say that again so you all heard me clearly. One of the local organizations here is actually labor trafficking the victims that she takes from the dance clubs and calls them trafficking victims when they're dancers and escorts and sex sellers. They're not trafficking victims. And why do they do that work with these women? They do it because they were sexually abused as children. And the only way they know to get attention is using their sexuality. They use the drugs to overcome. Most children, so child sex abuse is the issue. That is the basis of our initiative. That's where it started because everybody's getting it wrong. And if I see one more kid, if I have to look in the eyes of another adult woman who did not get help when she needed it, which is what made her children victims. Predators go where there is prey. I don't care what class or what social economic background they come from. Most sex buyers are actually well-educated, well-paid, middle upper to upper class professional white men with wives, children, social club, church, golf, etc. Those are the men who buy sex. That's a myth that people just don't grasp. So people tell me, well, why should they take your program? Well, there's a lot of reasons why. If your puppy pees on your carpet and you don't do anything about it the first or second or eighth time, guess what? Your puppy's going to keep peeing on your carpet. And I'm telling you, those are the posters I had to put out eventually. For 3 years, nobody paid any attention to what we were doing. Nobody knew. We talked about the in-demand program. We got nobody wanting to work with us. Nobody. I thought, well, they don't like me or whatever. It's not a me issue. It's a issue. So while the frauds and the naysayers are looking that way with the money trafficking, we've been dealing with what is really destroying the souls of humanity for hundreds of years. Hundreds. In the Philippines, I had a Philippine client sent to us. That was early to mid 90s in Canada. And he told us, when we finally found an interpreter, because there's 52 dialects of the Philippine language, he told us that it is commonplace for the male family members to have sex with the family females, no matter their age.
That's terrible.
2022, everybody's having sex with kids. And the people who, if you look in county jail and you look in prisons, they are a front row seat to the shit show that becomes of adults, sort of, who grow up being sexually abused as children. It's not a criminal issue. It's a mental health issue. And there's nobody to help them. That's why I know how much God put all this in place. I ask him 100 times a day, why did you pick me? Why? This is insane. I beat my head against the wall all day long and I still come back for more. That's how he made me. Because if the message does not get through and we don't see more change and let me rephrase that. If we don't see any change, we're going to burn to the ground anyway. And it's not going to be pretty. Right now, you are seeing the adults, sort of adults. They look like adults. They wear adult clothing. They sometimes do some adult things, but they're not adults. They're 11, 9, 10, 12, 13. Whenever they started using substances to numb their pain for self-medication, or they were plied with them to get them to be compliant in their sexual rapes as children, is neither here nor there. The result is the same. They never get traction. They never get help. And I need to make people understand the grooming process is not about the children. The predators can smell a victim from 1,000 miles away, online, in person. It doesn't matter. They know what to say. They know what to do. And they get into the family through the mother who didn't get help and doesn't know how to get help for her, and doesn't also know that because she didn't get help, her children are at risk. Every single one of them. And this happens generational. It is more generational in families than alcohol abuse or drug addiction. I had 4 women from the same family 35 years ago in my office when I was just starting out. 4 years ago, when I opened up the practice publicly and got an office and such, I had 4 women from the same family. And nothing's being done to the offenders. I'm sick and tired of seeing the victims in jail because they didn't know what else to do, because they used drugs to self-medicate. They used everything they can to forget what happened to them, because that trauma, it doesn't go away. We don't have a magic pill. We don't have a magic wand. I wish, oh my God, I wish I did. I wish every day I did. And this is what I say when they come to my office for the first time. I am so glad to see you. I'm happy to meet you. I'm so glad you're here. And let me just tell you, I am so sorry that the adults in your life did not do a better job protecting you. But we got you, and you're here now. And you can't, and I don't charge for that. You can't. Because every mother walking through the door with a child who's been referred to me has also been a victim that didn't get help. The children aren't groomed, the mothers are. Because the predators know what to say to the mother to weasel their way in to get unfettered access to the children. And you know why that happens? Because single mothers are tired. Single mothers who have had nothing but abuse and hard times, and and it's not just sex abuse. There, it goes into physical and domestic, and it goes on, and then nothing ever gets better, and the cycle is never broken. 4 women. Do you know, when I had those 4 at that one time, I thought, in a world like this, in the work we're doing, I will never have another case like that. Couldn't possibly be. I was wrong. I'm not wrong very often, but I was wrong. So the issue is sex abuse. The issue is that we don't consequence the offenders. The issue is there are no consequences. Locally, 6 years ago, I was told by the state attorney, who was getting ready to retire, and his replacement doesn't like me either, sent me an email. I still have it. That said, we don't have a sex crimes problem in Southwest Florida, so we don't need your end-demand program. I still have it. I'm not even gonna lie. I cried for 2 weeks, probably off and on. I was in chemo. I was at chemo at the same time, and I took my very first laptop, which weighed about 500 pounds. I did research in that chair every other day for 3 to 6 months, and then I started writing it. It took 15 months to write every word. It's way better now because I expanded it. But the sex crimes prosecutor, let me be clear, she wanted that program here, and she wanted it through the state of Florida. The DA, or they call them SAOs now. The SAO said what they said in that email. I still have it. 6 years later, they're still harassing me. They're still arresting me. They're still putting me in jail because I won't stop talking. And the one organization that they are aligned with through thick and thin, like thieves, is that organization I mentioned that sent me the email saying, can you tell me more about trafficking? Same people. Yes. Hashtag follow the money. So when I started the initiative, it's based on getting people to a point of healing. One, and that's where the prevention, protection, and prosecution came from. The protection, of course, which are the 3 stages of our initiative, is so kids don't get hurt. And the component there that is the most important for prevention is education. Why are we not teaching children about their sexual things going on in their bodies, the physical manifestations in their body of adolescence, and why they're angry or not angry, and why is their hair growing and not growing, and are my genitals the same as his or yours? Why are we not teaching them that? Why is there even none of that in school? Nothing. So I have a program called Healthy Body, Healthy Mind. That's one of our legislative efforts. We are going to work really hard to get those several of these issues we're looking to get legislative impact on, and that this healthy body, healthy mind in school education, age appropriate for primary, secondary, and high school students, because it has to be done. I don't understand why there's no health sciences, there's nothing. So these kids are learning everything they need to know, quote unquote, from their friends who don't have parents engaged either. Another part of our program is parenting, impaired parenting. So if you're looking at social media all day, or you're online all day long off and on playing games or whatever it is you guys do, I don't know. I am not attached to things like that. But there's parenting out there that's not being done. That was one of the other underlying foundations of the initiative. These kids are being raised by the internet. Oh my God, I can't even believe I have to say it again. The internet or their friends. Their friends are stupid, just like them. And the parents are not engaged. The fathers, another key component. We call that program sowing your seed and leaving, not acceptable anymore. So the No Fathers initiative of our program, or program of our initiative, is to reestablish the importance and outline and define what your father is supposed to do for the family. And not just for the boys, people, it's for the girls too. And let me explain to you the cases I am presenting to that particular program. And they are horrific about what happens to children when the fathers do not offer financial support or parental support. The number one contributing factor in all abuse is poverty, but it is exponentially effective in sexual abuse. Exponentially affected by sexual abuse. Single mothers are targets. They're not making any money. A lot of these women have been generationally lived in poverty, and they have no hope to do anything more, to do anything better. And I don't mean financial. I mean, they don't dream. They don't set goals. They don't believe that they can do anything more than the women that came before them. And they're okay with that. I am not. I am not. Educate them. So we have so many different areas. The parental alienation, which you are a fantastic champion of, that's also a legislative initiative. Parental alienation is abuse that is intentional, which in my opinion makes it criminal. These parents are imposing horrific, long-lasting, deep-seated, rarely recover kids into adulthood that experience this kind of behavior from their parents. It is toxic, it is horrifying abuse, and it is intentional. That makes it a crime. One of the bases of our criminal justice system in the United States is intent. Your second degrees and first degrees, et cetera, are based on your level of involvement, and were you intending to kill that person, or was it an accident? Did you intend to rape that child, or was it an accident? So if you are a parent and you're engaging in that type of horrifying abusive behavior, you should go to jail. These kids almost never recover. And I can speak to this not just professionally, but personally. I think I shared a bit of it on our last podcast, and it's not something I talk about very often, if at all, I don't think, till recently. It is incredibly, deeply painful to even broach the subject when I understand 3 generations of my family have experienced it. Children that were kidnapped, children that were lied to, children that were abused, children that were left for nothing. 3 generations in my direct family have experienced parental alienation tactics. And by the way, the fathers. A lot of people have argued with me about that. I will tell you personally, I have seen the fathers do it, not the mothers. I'm not saying the mothers don't do it. They don't get a pass. Anybody who does it, grandparents do it, everybody does it. But in my personal experience and a lot of my professional experience, it's the fathers doing that type of tactic. It's kind of similar in when the domestic violence turns into a homicide, because there's a point in that relationship where that man, let's say the man's the abuser, because mostly it's just the women that get hurt or killed. There is a point on that last confrontation, in that last fight, and her last effort to leave, where he sees something different in her eyes, and he is terrified. He sees that this time, she's not coming back. This time, she means it. this time you're not getting another chance to love bomb her. You're not getting another chance to woo her back in. She's not going to give another chance to hurt her or her children ever again. And that's when they die. Mm-hmm. These men don't want them to leave. They want them there to abuse. That makes them feel better. Do you know where that comes from? A lot of it comes from being sexually abused as a child. The men, the women, the statistics are wrong. And I have very quietly, kindly, as best I can, pointed to people who have the statistics wrong. And a couple of them were like reporting, they were like, we're God and we report this. The statistic was older than when I started. Like it was so far wrong. I just couldn't believe it. I also saw another expert on Twitter who said that when children know the actual names of their body parts, they are not susceptible to child sex abuse. I almost lost my mind. This lady had 100 letters after her name, which in my opinion just mean there's a bunch of letters after her name. And when I saw that she called herself an adolescent sexuality expert, among other things, I just pretty much let her have it. I try not to do that, but she was just so wrong. And here's what I said to her. I said, little Johnny doesn't say to daddy, please don't put your penis in my anus tonight because I don't feel good. Mm-hmm. Ridiculous. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. So sex abuse is the issue. It's gone unfettered. It's gone unconsequenced, and it doesn't stop. What we know about these offenders, because remember, I have been working with the offenders as long as I've been working with the victims, since 1987. They're not, I mean, they're monsters, but they all look like the boy next door. And some of them they do. I tried to explain to somebody about how sociopaths work. I said, look at the number one sociopaths and homicide predators. Bundy, for one, looked like your kid next door. Looked like he could not hurt a fly. He murdered over 30 women across the country before he was arrested and then finally put to death. They act like they're just like everybody else. It's an act. Mm-hmm. What we need to do is educate the children so that they don't get hurt. We have a human trafficking law or human trafficking course in Florida that's now a law that says we need to teach our children in school about human trafficking. There's only 100 problems wrong with that, and that's first putting the cart before the horse. Because every 2 little girls in that little meeting in your gymnasium and about every 3.5 boys in that gymnasium have already been raped in their own home by the time you start telling them about human trafficking, and they don't care. They don't care. They want to know why you and the other teachers and everybody who came before you allowed them to get hurt like they did, and who's going to make it stop. That's what they want to know. They want to know what their bodies are supposed to do and why we don't have sex as adolescent children, because you're going to mix sex feelings with love. Sex feelings are not love. They're not the same. That was my master's degree, actually. That was my thesis. I went to my professor and said, can I put this in a form of a letter? I'll do the whole thing for the orals and the written, but can I put it in the form of a letter? She said, go. She gave me 14 extra points. How you talk to kids matters. Because here's what happens when you tell a kid that guy is scamming you, that guy's playing you. Do you know what they do, Maryann? They call or they tweet or they call all their girlfriends, and they're like, dude, that guy's playing you. Don't do that. Get away from him. He says that. He's a liar. They do that. That boosts their self-esteem. That makes them coming from a position of strength, not a position of weakness, whether they've been abused or not. But you tell them how to handle these men and these people and these predators, they don't become more victims. They don't become victims of trafficking. If we get the manuals done, which is what we're working on, part of the initiative is we are building on my over 3 decades of experience in all these areas, personally and professionally. And so it's kind of why I kind of have the I guess, is what God really did, tweaking my life the way he did, because it has all led up to this initiative, and it's overwhelming. We have 1,001 team members now. In less than 12 months did I put that invitation out. I don't even know where to start with 1,001 people. I'm not even gonna lie. I just go every day and just keep going. And so the issue is sex abuse. The issue and the job of us. I'm also coming out with a new clinical program that's also part of the initiative, and I was not planning to discuss it until it was further down the pike. But I think this might be a really good opportunity, since we're talking about sex abuse. We also need to talk about the paraphilias. Paraphilias are homosexuality, pedophilia, there's a whole bunch of others, animal sex, that kind of thing. But what I started studying were the boys. Now, the boys have always been, through my career, my toughest cases. Not because the girls are not hurt in the same way, not because it's different or worse or better or not for the men or the boys and the girls. It's just different. And your anatomy is why it makes it different. We know now, which we didn't know back then, that women can have an orgasm if they're being raped. We know now that you can rape your wife. We know now that men can be sexually assaulted and raped. We knew none of that back then. And we never believed for 1 second the fathers had anything to do with any of the abuse going on in the home, when in fact, our numbers the first year came out, 95% were. And of course, that's grown bigger. So I started studying the young people, the young boys who know that they're abnormally attracted to sexually attracted to children. So let me say that again. Pedophilia is a specific paraphilia that is defined this way. And I want people to stop using this word as a nickel and dime word to throw around, because they're not using it in the proper context, so they don't understand the actual definition. The definition of a pedophile is this abnormal sexual attraction to prepubescent children. So Epstein's a good case of that. Ghislaine Maxwell was his girlfriend until she was too old and no longer satisfied his pedophilia urges. When they start to reach puberty and the children's bodies start to change, that's when the pedophiles have no longer any use for them. So I have 2 subjects, and I have 2 young males, and I have an adult male who openly says, I'm getting remarried, I believe in God, I'm changed, but I still have the urges for the little kitties, is what he said when he first reached out to me. And he didn't know, nobody knew I was doing this program. So in my opinion, because these kids don't want to offend, these boys, they know they're different. And let me put it in a bigger context. Homosexuality is a paraphilia. Paraphilias are also the only sex crime that is actually about sex. It is for sexual gratification. None of the other sex crimes are about sex. Sex crimes are about power, control, manipulation, and humiliation every single time. And like we tell women and we coach adult women to not struggle if they're under attack, all of the armed forces handbooks on sexual assault in the military also say the same thing. People came at me from all corners of the globe when I put that out there. I said, don't. It's not about the sex. It's about the struggle. You lay there like a dead fish, they're done. And here's another thing. If that person is attacking you, they have already decided if they're going to kill you or not. They are going to sexually assault you. But when people think of not fighting, the women always say to me at first, well, but they'll kill me, they'll hurt me. He already decided that before he got to you. So there's not anything you can do or not do to prevent that from happening, but you can prevent the rape by not participating in his game, okay? Women also rape for also very different reasons. So paraphilias are the only sexual activity that is about sex. Isn't that interesting? So what these young men have told me in great confidence is that they know the things that homosexuals used to say in their tape in their brain and their psyche is that all the bad things, I'm a beast, I'm an animal, I'm disgusting, I'm this, I'm that. Do you realize those tapes are just starting to get erased and replayed with positive? They can be married now. They have legal standing with their partners, which is really all they wanted to do, was go to the hospital if their partner was hurt. And hospital would say, what? You're not family? You can't see them. You couldn't collect death benefits. So it wasn't really about the marriage. It was about the legal status of your partner. But now they can get married. Now they can have sex, whether it's on the books or not, is a crime. Nobody cares. We care about the pedophiles because they hurt children. So what we determined, and what my conclusion was, is that if we want to call ourselves mental health professionals, if I choose to call myself a specialist or sex crime expert, I don't really care about titles. I don't have the right to do so if I'm not helping these kids learn another way to deal with their urges. And they know, just like homosexuals say, they know that they have this abnormal attraction from a very young age. We also know that you're born this way. There isn't a homosexual friend or client I have ever had that wished that they had who didn't wish they had a choice. They didn't wake up and say, I want to have sex with men or women. They woke up and that's what they were.
Mm-hmm.
The wiring in the brain is a little crossed. We shouldn't be surprised. We're humans, we're flawed. Things happen. But we don't have to treat them like monsters. We treat them like children who have a problem. We offer them solutions. We offer them strategies. We offer them hope. One of the strategies, which I'm going to get lots of email and messages about, is that we let them watch porn on their computer.
Mm-hmm.
You have to. You have to. Because the certain steps, so if they know when they're in their young age, say 6 or 7 years old, some of them know at 4 or 5 years old, honestly, and you can see the pain in them. I don't have to ask if someone's been sexually abused. I can see it in their eyes. That's how long I've been doing it. I don't even have to ask. There's a place in their eyes that you can't get to.
Mm-hmm.
It's closed off. They don't want anybody near it. It hurts too much. So these kids are begging for help. They do not want to commit alive. That's what we call it. We do not sugarcoat things. We do not give them fancy, funny names. They do not want to cross over from fantasy to commit alive, which is when they get to puberty. So some of the things will work until they get to puberty, and then we have to set another set of strategy and tools in place, because once they get that testosterone and the rest of their happy adolescent hormones, that's when alive happens without tools and strategies to stop them. People are talking about the child sex dolls, which is abhorrently ridiculous. I read 2 papers and I scribbled and screamed the whole time, and not one of the people who were reported to contribute had any business whatsoever. I mean, no business, no education, no training, no clue, and they were wrong. If you look at the men, mostly men, who buy these sex dolls, most people think it's for sex. Again, it's not about sex. They name these dolls. They have dinner with these dolls. These dolls are companions. They're not some freaky, rude, behind the door closet type of thing. They find an easier time relating to the doll than to other humans.
Oh my gosh, this is terrible.
Yes. Yeah, that's a sad state. So the sex dolls are another thing we're going to have to allow these kids to use if they choose to. It's one option. Having them have access to this, it's not a good thing. And we got to stop it. Child sex porn do you guys know the number one contributor and producer and distributor of child sex pornography is the United States, people. It's right here in the red, white, and blue. And of course, that will expand up north to Canada. But the United States has been credited the number one for years and years and years. I can't even think how long ago it has been that way. Mm-hmm. So we don't want anybody to produce it. We don't want there to be a market for this. But there are things out there that we're going to have to look at that are lesser the evil for these boys and some girls, but mostly the boys is what we've come across. I'm not saying it doesn't happen in females. Our studies have been about boys, again, because of my history with boys and the difference in the physiology, and because they're just not looked at. When I first got back into this, I went to a couple of training meetings here. I had been ill and my son was sick, and I kind of left my career for a minute. And when I got back into it, people were talking about trafficking. I looked around and went, what in the hell are they talking about? Like it's new. Mm-hmm. And then I started seeing more and more. Well, again, nobody wants to hear the truth. They want to chase the money. They want to believe that they know what they're doing. But the problem is they don't know what they don't know. And I'm sorry, going back, I know I flipped it a little bit. Going back to that letter from that organization who's aligned with the state attorney, do you have any idea what happens to a young person when they finally reach out for help? If that had been an actual victim, do you have any idea the consequences that victim will face? Because when you send me an email back to that victim that says, can you please tell us more what you mean about tracking? That little girl, that little boy, they say, that's it. Mm-hmm. Nobody can help me. I'm not worth saving. I'm
Mm.
not worth housing. I'm not worth taking care of. I'm not worth anybody loving me. I'm not worth parents. I'm not worth safety or help or anything.
Mm.
You sign their death warrant when you do that. When you ask these victims to be victim-led, survivor-led, you are a jackass. I just made the reason I was late coming to our podcast recording was because I was answering a message on LinkedIn about how that was just wrong. And I wanted to make it very clear. Survivor-led things are not okay. You know how I know that? Because they haven't gotten the help that I provide or that my manuals and my training provides. I know they haven't because there's only one of me. And again, it's not about me. It's about how God put in my life the things and tools that I need to do to run this the way he wants it run. And I'm probably messing the whole thing up, but I just keep going because I just believe in it that much. You know, the no pay, the no money, that was absolutely critical because that's when I realized if I can do this work and I don't have a dime to my name and every little bit I need, comes out of my own pocket for 4 years. If I can do it, why are they not doing it?
Mm-hmm.
So the not having any money has been absolutely crucial. Hasn't been fun. Hasn't been fun. It hasn't been easy. But if it had not been that way, I might not have said, let me look at what's really happening. Because I am a truth seeker. I'm a therapist. I'm a psychologist. It is my job to find the truth, get to it, present it in a way that you can use in your life for healing and peace. Healing and peace. So when a victim gets a response like that voicemail or that email, or you put a survivor-led this, or you do a survivor this and that, it accosts me to see. Nobody has any business telling survivors or victims how to treat and how to clinically treat other victims, unless you are trained and unless you've been in extremely deep clinical work yourself. And that's because you were a victim of trafficking, because you were a victim of sex abuse in your own home, usually. The dots are so clearly lined up. We have so much work to do. Here's the other thing about this task force of 1,001 members. Every single one of us is a Christ follower or believer. It is not a requirement. Everybody gets a seat at this table. If you know a kid, love a kid, had a kid, were a kid, see a kid, you get a seat at this table. Because these children deserve nothing less. We have screwed this up for them for a couple of decades, and I'm going to say the last 3.5 that I've worked in it, and nothing's changing for them, and it just keeps getting worse and worse. So these victims of sex abuse often have the same path. Again, it's not even new. The other thing that people are doing in the anti-trafficking movement I saw is that they're focused on the problem. Hello, wait a minute. See, people buy people for money. Yeah, we probably need to have a degree in that. This issue does not need another penny. It doesn't need anything except for the people who have the power to impact change, to listen to people who know how to create that change. We're going to be big, we're going to be bold, and we're going to be loud. And 1,001 team members that have God on our side, are you kidding me? It doesn't matter how many walls I hit my head with. It's still going to be going on. The original idea of the initiative was to start a movement, to make it global so that we had a springboard to bounce off of, so that it's not just an initiative to put children first. We create a movement, one fight, one team. One fight, one team. So that we always put children first, not dollars first. DCF, that's a whole nother show. We could talk about parental alienation, a whole other show. The addiction factor, it is all entwined. When I started the company, I thought, we're just going to do sex crimes. And then immediately I was opening my mental health division out of a conference I went about kids at Gulf Coast University I was invited to, which changed everything again. And they're not separate. They cross over. So we have diagrams, we have ways to show the access of healing for sex abuse victims and the prosecution and the punishment of those that hurt them. So we go back to our prevention, protection, and prosecution. But we start with sex abuse. We go with education. Why we have to fight for this, I just don't even know. I just don't even know. But we're going to keep fighting until. We also understand that for sex crimes, in our sex crimes division work, one of our biggest pushes is to support the Test the Kits. Test those damn kits.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember which, I want to say Detroit was the place that Mariska Hargitay went to actually show the building where these hundreds of thousands of rape kits over decades had been stored in these moldy places, blah, blah, blah. Here's the problem with that. They went through about 1,500 tests at the point that they put this information out. They did about 3,000 tests. 1,500 of them were repeat offenders.
Mm.
Now, let's hear that again. They don't stop. Men will move and work and live in communities where laws are lax and enforcement is laxer. Guess where that is? Southwest Florida. And by the way, we have beaches and sun and palm trees. They do that. They don't stop. So testing the kits needs to be a law that you have 60 to 90 days. And if you go over that, you get some kind of financial there will be some alternative to compel you to do this. And why? And why wasn't Mariska Hargitay and the No More people, why haven't they accomplished that? They didn't try. I'm guessing they didn't try. Well, God laid things out for us. And we're just going to go after everything that needs to be corrected. We also know, these are the best of the best, because I told God, if you want me to do this, you're going to have to send me the best of the best in kids, and nothing else will do. We've been approached by Homeland Security, human trafficking, exploitation, special agent in charge, contacted me 4 months in a row. We're not going to work with them. Mm-hmm. They want what we do, and they have the money to make sure we keep doing it. I said, no, thank you. The other lady I mentioned earlier, same thing, no thank you. Because even if people know what their real issues are, they don't know how to fix them. And so our goal when we do these podcasts, our goal when we do the interviews coming up, and we're doing conferences, hopefully we can get some funding. I can go to 3 virtual conferences, which means I don't have to leave. And these people have been begging me for 3 and 4 years, some of them, to come speak about anything. They let me talk about anything. So the goal is to expand our reach. The goal is to we don't recruit. We do not beg. We do not chase. We don't even look. I told God, send them to me, and we'll send an invitation. If they're not interested, that is absolutely okay. No hard feelings. Some of it's for some people and some of it isn't. And I know some of my trafficking members are going to be really upset when they find out what the truth is. But again, they're focusing on the problem. We don't need to know more about the problem. Mm-hmm. We need to talk about the solution. And that's what all of this is. The solutions to preventing sex abuse in your home. The solutions to protection when they've already been hurt. Mm-hmm. Child education. Teach them what they're going to do. Teach them how to transact with their own sex and the opposite sex. We do. And it's fun. The kids love it. They get to act like adults and they get to act like children, and they have a ball, and they learn it, and then they share it. And kids need to be empowered because nobody's got their back. Teachers, education, even your pediatricians, and the list goes on and on. We have all failed them. It is not okay. It's not okay with me. I refuse to now accept the things I cannot change. And we may not, and most of us know, we're not so naive, but a lot of us are, long in the tooth like I am. And they've been doing this, some of them a long time, a couple of law enforcement people that I just admire beyond measure, because they understand what the reality is instead of all the gobbledygook and all the puff pieces and all the propaganda. A couple of them in particular know exactly what the story is. And so when we're aligned that way, we're going to be very powerful moving forward. Having all of these people be God, again, you don't have to be, it's not a requirement, but the fact that God sent them to us is a remarkable, something I'm in awe of every day. It's 47 pages of names. I was going to print it yesterday because I have to probably correct a lot of spelling, but I'm just like, wow, the enormity of the whole thing. I'm pretty sure if God had asked me, I would have said, ha, and you got the wrong girl. I honestly, quite frankly, I believe I did say that to him. I said, have you seen my health summary? You've been watching, hello. He absolutely picked me. And I had a 6-year-old little girl tell me why. She said to me, because you're the only person who knows how to talk to kids so they listen.
Mm-hmm.
You're the only person who has the programs to help these kids who've been hurt. She said, it has to be you. And she was a tiny little petite 6-year-old girl. And she stood up from the little desk I made her to be our label maker. Because I was told she couldn't read. So I made her a label maker. Taught her how to read with a label maker. And she stood up, the pudgy little thing, who I will love to the end of my days, and said that to me with the sage of 100-year-old soul. Matter of factly. I know exactly why God picked you. And so when I get through the day, and I've been through the day, and I've hit my wall here, and I've hit the wall there, and I think the walls are going to fall down if I just keep punching with my head.
Right.
And I start to say, why did you pick me? I don't even ask. She was right. It doesn't matter how hard it is. It has to be done. Will we achieve every single goal we set out from beginning till our time is done here on this earth before we go home? Probably not. A lot of things are going to take a lot more time to shift. But here's what we'll know with 100% certainty. We will get to the end of our days knowing that we blazed a trail. We set up the next generation to follow behind us, and they will know exactly how to move forward and what movements and steps to take on every one of these things. So that's what we're doing now. We're doing the brainstorm sessions with all of our team members, and we've really divided them into now are my sex crimes division and my mental health division. And in fact, the mental health division is actually bigger than the sex crimes is, because there's only a few things over here we need to work on, but consequences are the first thing. We saw these men back then, we saw these women who knew these men were their child's perpetrator, marry them. We watched them come in pregnant, have babies with them. They don't stop. They do not stop. We have to test the kids. We have to stop children from being raped in their own homes, their own beds, or wherever it is they are. You know, and I'm never surprised. The gymnastics and swimming, and when I've been talking about these things for years and years, and mothers who have kids on the swim team said, "Oh no, don't be silly." Gymnastics, same thing. My kids wrestling the basketball. I said, just be aware. We don't want to scare people. We want to empower them. What our goal is to empower these kids, educate them, educate their mothers, get these professional development manuals out, especially this child sex abuse stuff. Get out my manuals on child sexuality and what not to look for, what's normal and what age bracket. We put that out. I have that too. But there's a couple of things that are just not going to be, and so we need to consequence the offenders, and we need to test those kids. That's how we stop victims of being raped.
What do you think of these judges that are giving kids over to the abusers? I mean, have you ever approached any judges with these pamphlets that you have? And
no, because they won't let me. One of the things I'm going to be asking my law enforcement friend when I speak to him next is, what do I do? What step do I take next? Do I just send another letter? Because the state attorney here, what do I do with that? All they have to do, here's the worst part. All they have to do is put our program on a piece of paper in front of the judges that sees those first and second time misdemeanor sex buyers and go, oh, wait a minute, look at that. So you're going to get more than a $30 fine and a slap on the wrist. You're going to go pay for this program, which offsets the cost of the free counseling that children and their mothers need. And you're not going to be released from your probation until you complete that course. They won't let me. And I stopped when they told me that they didn't need that program. I stopped asking for their permission to do my job. Same with DCF. I said, screw you, all of you. You have no idea what you're doing. And then I put a little poster out, and I'm sure that this upset them a little bit, but if you have the fix to a problem as bad as what scourged the souls of humanity on this earth, like sex abuse and trafficking or whatever it is, and you don't use it, guess what? You are complicit in every single rape, every time a child is assaulted in their bed, you are complicit. The two-tiered justice system where rich people, white men, don't have to do anything, and they get off, even though literally get off. There were 2 videos of Robert Kraft, the Patriot Center. I saw them. 12 months later, The attorney over in West Palm Beach did exactly what I knew he was going to do, because I called and asked. I did. And they did nothing. Said that 12 months later, released the charges. They did not have enough evidence to prosecute.
Mm.
That's an upper class white dude. They weren't even told, like, make a donation. We're in the same state. When I called their legal department, when I called the state attorney after that happened, because they were calling a trafficking sting. By the way, here's another myth buster. There is no such thing as a trafficking sting. They are sex buying and sex selling stings. Here's another fun fact. The reason they bust the sellers instead of the buyers is because it takes less law enforcement to do so. To get the sellers, you only need 2 to 3 law enforcement officers. To catch the buyers, you need 6 to 9.
Mm-hmm.
That's why they don't go after the buyers. And again, you're going after the victim. These women are victims. They're not selling their bodies because they like it, which I've heard. I'm not even kidding. I have a whole list of stupid shit that men say in these programs. Oh, I thought they liked it. The exchange of money, by the way, is not consent. And it is not an equal. It's not equality. It's not an equal relationship or even coming together, because one is elevated higher than the other.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're in socioeconomic backgrounds. So there's no equality. Equality also implies a choice. These women don't have a choice. They're drug addicted. They've been abused their entire lives. They couldn't feel worse about themselves if they tried. These men who buy sex think they're buying a sex act. And by the way, most of them are not going for sex. That's another fun thing to talk about. Most of them are not going for sex. They're not. Mm-hmm. So again, it has nothing to do with sex. They keep getting let go. The buyers get off the hook. The abusers go off the hook. We throw the victims under the bus in this country. Mm-hmm. We throw the children under the bus in this country. And we say, oh, too big, too bad. Or we focus on trafficking, which is a topic, not an issue. We have a lot of issues. So
yes,
my next move is going to be something in that vein, Maryann. We also don't fundraise. We don't beg for money. I don't have any money. It's not easy, but it's worth it. And I've been telling people, you don't understand. This cause is way more important than my comfort or my compensation. And it's that important that my 16-year-old kid, he knows it. He knows it. Mom, you got to do what you got to do. You got to do this. You have to do this. I'm like, really? We just talked about it yesterday. I was like, what am I doing? Broke? You know, it's a whole line of things. But again, it's that important. And I'm a flawed human being like everybody else. I have good times and bad times. I have bad days and good days. But I remember those kids, and I remember all of them. Jeremy was 16 when he walked in our doors in 1987. His mother was in counseling with her therapist, and he was out in the waiting room, and I was drawn to him. Jeremy went on to tell me why he was in our offices. These are some of the stories I'm going to share with the fathers who walk away. Jeremy was sexually abused by his biological father. From the time he could remember till about 8 years old, when he went to school and reported it, that father went to prison. Mom wasn't happy about that, but mom was less happy by the time they walked in our doors, because mom was a victim that didn't get help. Guess what happened? Another predator found her. Guess what another predator did? Went on from 9 years old to 16, sexually abusing Jeremy.
Oh my goodness. You know, I've heard of things like this happening.
So he was promised a truck for his 16th birthday to not tell for almost another decade of his little life.
That's
there was
terrible.
no truck in the driveway. So he got on the bus, he went to school, and he told the guidance counselor principal. And now that father was in prison. When I was called to bring Jeremy back, I left and went down the hall. They were at the end of the hall. I got back up to my office before I heard chairs and desks moving. And I run back there and bust open the door. The mother is pissed off at her son. It's Jeremy's fault that they're not living below their means. It's his fault that she doesn't have a husband. It's his fault. It's his fault.
That's terrible.
That's why. That's why I do what I do. And we're going to share a lot of these stories we can't share. There's another one. We found a little girl in a cage. Nobody could find her. We found her. A big cage, like your largest dog cage you can find. It was a cage like that. She was nonverbal. And we couldn't tell how old she was. She was very little. So our first thing is to get her out, and we can take all our victims once we get them straight to the emergency room for examinations, of course. Well, we didn't do sane kits back then. They had not come into, but I'm back there with her, and then I have to call. I step out for a minute, and then the doctor came out and said, "I need you to sit down." I said, "What's happening?" He said, I said, "How old is she?" He said, "The best we can tell, 9 to 11 years old, nonverbal, nothing, starved, malnourished, tiny, on death's door probably. If she'd been left a couple more days, she probably would have died." There was no food in that cage. There was no water in that cage. But that's not the headline. The headline says, he says, "But there's more." And I said, "Oh, dear God, what?" She was pregnant.
Oh, no.
Oh, yeah. Another little girl, missing 6 months. I put out my girls in the neighborhood, and I said, "Where is she? Tell me now." So the parents are in therapy with me, but they can't get the child in because they can't find her. I said, "Where do I go?" Because I didn't know about at-home massage therapists. I didn't know anything about them. And so this was one of my first inductions into that world. And they said, "Try this area, this block. It'll be one of these houses." They couldn't tell me. The second door I knocked on, and I mean, Maryann, everyday America neighborhood. I knock on the door. She's 11 years old. She answers the door. And a light lavender teddy that, although I was married and had a child, made me blush. The cops are behind me, of course, but they're in the car on the sidewalk. And I just kind of hollered for him. I said, "Very good. It's nice to see you. We're going to go in here and we're going to collect your belongings. And these people are going to be arrested, and you're coming with me. And we're going to return you after we get you to a hospital to see how you are." Yeah, those are the kinds of stories that I've not shared because they're horrifying. Horrifying. But those are the kinds of things I think maybe I've held back too much and not shared. How horrifying. That little girl was probably sexually abused since birth. Another little boy, this one I can't even, I don't know if I can share it. Little boy, 3, 4 years old. His parents hung him up upside down by his ankles attached to like a clothing rack or a garment rack. It took him 3.5 days to die. Why they tortured him.
I thought that made the news. That made the news, as I recall.
It's a long time ago. This is about 6 or 7 years ago, at least, maybe. Yeah. There's another man in Texas pimped out his 4-year-old girl for drugs. Yeah. So if you want to talk to me about trafficking, you can pretty much kiss my butt, because this has nothing to do with trafficking. It's about sex abuse. It's about raping children and stealing from them their identity, their lives. They are not the same people, and they are never going to be, because they don't have therapists who are trained. If you want to see something abhorrent, look at therapy notes from therapists who deal with some of these kids who have no idea what they're doing. And again, I'm not trying to be a snotty know-it-all, but I do know. And I think it's the basis of the initiative is to stop it, change it, fix it, and to make sure that professional dealing with these children, because they're everywhere. Right. 1 in 2 women. If you think about trafficking, is you could go through your entire day and never know you were in the company of a trafficking victim. You know how we know? Because they're that good. And you know how we know they're that good? Is because they get away with it. And some of the victims don't even know they're victims. Case in point, R. Kelly. 3 of his victims said, "We're not abused." I did not watch all of it. I couldn't. They didn't even know they were victims. So you would not even know. So all these trainings everybody's doing in the libraries, it's all good and fine, but you're accomplishing absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. Now, you go through that same schedule in a day. You will see every 2 women who have been sexually abused. Every 3.5 men, they were sexually abused as a child. And you're going to meet them, and you're going to run into them all day long. Tell me what the real issue is. You want to talk to me about trafficking some more? I'm sorry. You're just wrong. And as long as the devil has that out for you guys to look that way, the devil's still in charge.
Mm-hmm.
So while you guys look that way, he's got predators in your children's bed, and they're raping them daily, sometimes more than once a day.
And these kids don't have a chance. Their souls are
Nothing.
being taken from them.
Oh my God. It is the most, I don't know if I coined this phrase, but I've been saying it is the most soul-sucking experience on the planet.
Mm-hmm.
And they never recover. They go to jail.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what? There's no therapy. There's
Mm-hmm.
no professional. They won't let me in. I asked. Somebody said to me, with all the stuff you do, all the no's you get, all the headbang you do, how come you're happy? I said, because there's always an upside.
Mm-hmm.
As long as I can find a little bit of light shining through the darkness of this perpetual evil that nobody's trying to stop. The
Mm-hmm.
cops here can't even carry my brochures. They won't let them carry a little Dollar Tree bag with little Dollar Tree stuff in it, like for different ages. Barbie
Mm-hmm.
doll, a toy doll for a guy, a writing journal, notebook for the older kids, and my business card and my brochure. They're not allowed. Please tell me why.
Mm-hmm.
Why would they not be allowed? I had a guy dressed in full SWAT walk by my office door with his partner, and they were sitting down to lunch, and I brought my cards, and he was in tears. This guy was a massive human being. Even sitting down, I was a little afraid of him, and I'm as tall as a tree. And there were tears running out of that man's eyes because they're not allowed to carry resources or anything for these victims. And they will tell you, the state attorney is telling everybody they're trained. He said, we are not trained. We are hurting them. We are re-victimizing them every time we talk to them. And we are dying for someone like you to come and set it right. And they won't let me do that either. So
yeah, this is the world.
Yes. Yes.
You know,
not a better time. Go ahead.
Oh, no. Go ahead. Finish what you're saying. No. I'm sorry.
Just never been a better time to do this initiative. And again,
definitely.
I could spend the rest of my days doubting everything I've done up to this point in my life, personal, professional. But I'll tell you what I am 100% confident in. God prepared me for this time, for this work, for this level up of Christians, for this initiative to cover as many of these things as we can. My entire life. Mm-hmm. I was a therapist before I was a sex crimes therapist. My girlfriends were all sexually abused. Every single one of them. I was not. I was raped later. I was not sexually abused as a child. People tell me, how do you do that every day? I had therapists I trained straight out of university come to me and say, just a ball on the floor. They had shouted me and said, I can't do this. My parents are going to kill me. Up in Canada, it's very common for the parents to pay for their kids' education. I know, that's a stunning idea. But one of them in particular, I brought over from another agency to work the child welfare program I was running and really liked her. She said to me, I don't know how you do this every day. I can't do it. My parents are going to kill me. Okay, so first of all, take a breath. You don't have to do the clinical work. There are lots of other ways you can help. And so I've had that conversation a lot. But so I can tell you with 100% confidence, this was my job. Mm-hmm. I don't always like it either.
Well, Jennifer, how can people reach you if they want to join your initiative?
They can reach out. We're everywhere. We're on LinkedIn. We're on Instagram. We're on Twitter. You can send us a message. They can text us at 239-601-4389. We're working on a website, but there's just not enough hours in the day for me to do everything. And although I was just telling somebody I'm talking to tomorrow that we've had lots of people, my son and I actually have a little skit we do who have said to us, we want to help you, we want to support you, we want to financial support, whatever. We've never, in 4 years, we've never seen one penny. So here's our skit. Jacob, when people want to help, what do? They help. And when they want to help and they don't follow through, what do they want to do? Attention.
No, the last time you were on my podcast, I put in the podcast notes your phone number. Do you still want me to keep that phone number?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely.
Could you say your phone number one more time?
Yes, absolutely. 601-4389. And that covers the task force, the initiative, the sex crimes division, and then our mental health division.
I'm
Again,
glad
when I was going through this, I had no idea where it was leading. None. So I'm, when I'm not frustrated and tired and just like, what am I doing? I just sit back and go the awe of the power of my God to put all these things in place and to have it be so clear. It's extraordinary. And I am in awe. And I sit and read about that. When I look at how many people have signed up, even though I'm not really sure sometimes what they think they're signing up for, but they're the best of the best, I will sit here and I will weep when I see an ex-SEAL member, when I see the top law enforcement, some retired, some not, when I see task force people, when I see social workers and therapists. We're not, because the topics we've discussed today are not all of the topics we're looking at. We're looking at changing some DCF things. I have a child welfare diversion program that consistently every quarter is over 80% to keep children in the home or reunite them had they been separated prior to our involvement. That's my child welfare diversion program. Guess what? DCF down here doesn't want it. You know why? Hashtag follow the money.
Yes.
Every time they're legally kidnapping children and they're engaged. Yeah, and they're engaged in parental alienation tactics. It's the same behavior. It's terrifying. When I first started working with kids, it was best interest of the kid, best interest of the kid, best interest of the children. Everybody said it. Now DCF tells you that to your face outside their office doors, but everybody knows now that once those doors are closed, they're being trained to apprehend children. Not help them, not get them resources, not put services in the home, which is really what they need, which is what our program does. It gives a certain number of hours with a family sports specialist, specially picked out and trained, and then you get a clinical supervisor. So somebody like me who is trained to do therapy, and guess what kind of therapy they need? Maryann, let's all say it together, sex abuse therapy. That's what they need. They need parental support. They need resources. All those things can be accomplished in a matter of 30 to 45 hours and over 80% success, quarter after quarter after quarter. Nobody wants it.
I know I want to have you back on because I know because there's like more to say and I wish we had more time, but definitely got to get you back on. So don't jump off, okay?
Okay.
Slam the Gavel is a podcast to help the public understand what really goes on in the family courtrooms. I'm your host, Maryann Petri, author of Dismantling Family Court Corruption, Why Taking the Kids Was Not Enough, and Cry Out for Justice, Poems of Truth. Please join us again here with Jennifer Murphy here in the future and other guests. Thank you again, Jennifer. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Maryann. We're so thankful. Thank you.
Well, thank you too.